Well, good morning and welcome to this Saturday edition of Breakfast Extra, your weekend fix for all the hot topics making waves in Nigeria through the week. From the latest in politics to everything taking or maybe shaping the status quo, well, we've got it covered for you. Now, let's dive into something that's been on many minds this weekend, the Nigerian judiciary, or perhaps should I say two Nigerian judiciaries. I'll explain. We've seen two cases that sharply contrast the state of our justice system the past 1 week, and it's enough to make one wonder whether we're living in a special kind of alternate reality. Now, one involves a simple but serious civil case, the defamation lawsuit filed against human rights lawyer Dele Farotimi by senior advocate of Nigeria, Babalola. The other one revolves around a staggering allegation of 110 billion naira fraud, where former Governor Yahaya Bello is granted an eye-raising 500 million naira bail. One man, a member of the public, is facing the full weight of the law, while the other, a former public office holder, seems to be receiving a dose of what many are calling the VIP treatment, whether you like it or not. You've seen the videos and pictures. So how did we get here? And more importantly, why is there such a glaring difference in the way these cases are being handled? Here's the first of many glaring contrasts. Farotimi's defamation case is rooted in a matter of principle, protecting one's honor, integrity, right to speak out. But despite the significance of his case, it seems the system is determined to stretch him thin, dragging him like that generator they call I Better Pass My Neighbor through the lengthy legal proceedings. And on the other hand, the case involving Governor Bello, Yahaya, we all know that name now, it's here to stay, who's facing allegations of a jaw-dropping financial scandal. Well, he appears to be proceeding with a peculiar kind of gentleness, the case is. Now, this includes granting bail on terms that, frankly, make one wonder if former public office holders have the VIP pass to freedom, sauntering into court with no handcuffs, unlike what was seen in the case of Farotimi, who was bundled into court amidst heavy security and in handcuffs. But wait, this isn't just about the two cases in isolation. This stark difference raises broader questions about the fairness, consistency, and also impartiality of the judicial system. The question on everyone's mind is, why does it feel like the rich and powerful are allowed to stroll through the courts while the common citizen is put through the ringer? And here's the kicker. Why now? Why in 2024 does Nigeria remain such an outlier in terms of judicial fairness? Could it be that our judiciary is under siege? Pause for effect. Are journalists and critics simply the next victims in the line of fire? The recent clampdown on journalists, in particular, raises serious concerns about whether our system is evolving or devolving when the press becomes the target of the very system that should protect it. We might be seeing some more than just isolated incidents here. We may be witnessing a troubling shift that could affect how Nigeria is perceived even internationally. And so, as we sit back and wonder what really is happening behind the legal curtains, one thing becomes clear. The time has come for, well, redress. The powers that be must address the current state of affairs before Nigeria's international reputation slips further down the line. Because honestly, what's happening in our courts right now doesn't just affect the people who walk into it, and it casts a shadow on the entire nation, whether you like it or not. So, with that, let me reintroduce myself. That's if I did in the beginning. My name is Mazino Appeal, and also with me here today is my brilliant co-host Judith Atibi. Judith, say hi to everybody, please.
Hi, everybody.
Now, I bet we've got a packed show today now, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely, and we can't wait to just unpack everything and just bring you all the insights and perspectives. Mazino has done a fantastic job laying out all we're going to be discussing today. The judiciary, legal, as well as
human rights.
And our very good friend Yahaya Bello as well.
Yeah, can't wait. I think I'm going to adopt him as my other uncle. The first one is Wiki. But we'll get to talking about all of that one. Welcome, Judith. Welcome, viewers. Do stay tuned because we've got all the way until 11 for the show here. This is Breakfast Extra.
And good morning again, and welcome. Now that we have set the stage with our monologue, let's dive into what's coming up on today's show. So first, we revisit and dissect Ghana's 2024 elections, the lessons and takeaway as violence erupted during the week amidst calls from the president and president-elect for peace. And later, we'll shift focus, examining World Human Rights Day, our rights, our future, right now. And we'll also take a look at what the rights of the average Nigerian are, and if we're aware what these rights will be. We'll also make time for our regular segments, including a few big reports and a look at the Dele Farotimi case in full view of the Nigerian judiciary. But for now, as always, let's get into the dailies for this morning. And Mazino is right next to me. We're going to get started with The Nation for this morning. We'll pull that up for you on the screen there. With The Nation newspaper, Rivers crisis, Akpabio knocks Fubara PDP. You can find that story there just on the front page of The Nation. And it goes on to say, you can find it on page 4 and 29 of The Nation. Says government can't run state by ostracizing speaker, lawmakers. Explains why president made ex-Rivers governor FCT minister. Wike, I am not bothered by criticism. Tinubu's backing enough for me. Appeal court vacates order stopping allocations to state. That story is on page 4 and page 29. At the top there, Edun. Federal government launches WIT subsidy to enhance food security. That story is on page 5. Southeasterners shun Yuletide travels over insecurity and cost. That story is on page 28. Afe Babalola petitions LPDC, demands Farotimi's disbarment. You can find that story on page 2. Alleged 80 billion naira fraud. Court grants Bello 500 million naira bail. That story is on page 27. Nigerian extradited to U.S. from Ghana over $6 million cyber fraud. That story is on page 3 there. And at the bottom there, lecturer held for alleged kidnap of ASU chairman's wife. Ooh, that story is on page 2. Now I'm interested in that one.
That surprised you?
Oh, yes.
I'll tell you what surprised me was the one on Wiki telling that he is not bothered by opposition.
It's no news.
The president's backing is, that speaks volumes. Let me tell you something, yeah. Because when you look at it critically, first off, two opposing parties and the staunchness, if there's a word like that, by Wiki for the president or for the APC, it leaves plenty to wonder. All right, so let's move on now. We are going to be moving on to our next daily. And that, of course, is the Punch newspaper for a Saturday. Front and center for the Punch 2027 presidency. PDP invites Jonathan as party's fate hangs on neck. 10 good luck Jonathans can't defeat Tinubu, says the APC. Judith, do you wanna place your bets?
Ah, goodness me.
Place your bets now.
Goodness me.
At the top, inside Finland's toughest prisons, where Simon Ekpa shares wing with killers and rapists. I'd like to see that documentary. Business booms for Naira traders as bankers' collusion worsens scarcity. We're going to talk about that one in just a bit. Let me finish with all the dailies here. Hope turns grief, unhealed pains of mothers giving birth to dead babies. Very sad. And on page 10, you'd find this one. Desperate Ondo man burns wife, kills self over a unresolved dispute. That's a mental health case. How Kemi Badenoch used Nigerian roots to become British MP. She says she's Yoruba, has no links with the North. And why I left well-paying job to sell jollof rice on London streets, says Buckingham University graduates, because times are hard. Where did I say I was coming back to?
The one about the business?
The collusions and the businesses and the ATM.
Yeah.
There is a new trend in town. It's not that new, but the fact is this. There are no monies at the ATMs. This I tried myself personally. Went over to the ATM to try and to transfer money, and I was told that I could not. The ATMs were not working.
Right.
I went to 3 different banks, and then eventually I just simply settled to use a POS vendor.
Agent.
And that was it. I had to pay the extra. But what's going on here? Why are our banking institutions not doing what they're supposed to do and relegating that to individuals? Which is okay because you're creating business, I understand. But then again,
I have a theory.
Which is?
It's expensive running the ATMs. It's very expensive. And now that fuel prices are high, they're not going to keep it on.
The logistics.
The logistics
put in
to to put the money on,
in the
put the
bullion
power
vans,
on, everything. It is expensive. And with the high insecurity, pushing more money from pushing the bullion vans. You know, it was a common sight to see bullion vans in those days.
Yeah.
Now you barely see them around. Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Let's move on from Saturday Punch now to our
Sorry,
next
the
piece.
silence there was, I was awestruck.
It's just really like, oh,
Yeah,
so
it's
it
a
makes
lot-
more
it
sense
just-
now. It dawned on you then.
It dawned on me.
Let's move from Saturday Punch to our next newspaper, shall we? We'll move away from Saturday Punch now to the very next paper for today. And that will be Daily Independent. We have Daily Independent. How Nigeria stands to reap 18 billion naira investment through family planning. That's from Oji and Orders. You can find that story there. Program can help combat socio-economic depression. Health experts need to meet contraceptive prevalence rate FP 2030 goals. AAFP. You can find that story on page 8. At the top there, FCT. Tinubu's silence over a week is mass demolition of houses implies presidency's approval. That's from Timmy Frank. That story is on page 4. Akpabio's aide apologizes for congratulating Governor Eno on wife's death. That story is on page 7.
That was embarrassing.
Just too embarrassing. There's no excuse. There's nothing you can tell me.
We have all been guilty once or twice.
So congratulating people over.
But
That's not even the adjective to use.
I understand. But once again, he's human. He might have been excited, but that was embarrassing.
How you trying to make an excuse? You can't even make an excuse for
I
it.
say this before somebody's going to pull out something from the past when I've done something wrong like that. So I'm being human here.
Congratulations for the loss. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that was
anyway,
terrible.
it was just not right. Let's move away from that now. Family seeks justice over death of 8-year-old son. How my son was slaughtered like goat by herbalist apprentice. That's from his statement. There's from the father. Suspect in custody will be paraded soon. That's the statement there from the police. You can find that story on page 7. Fulani group alerts DSS of possible breach of peace in Kwara State. That story is on page 5. How court freed us from alleged conspiracy after 16 years in prison. Ex-prison inmates narrate terrifying experience. Detainees eat feces, drink bath water. That story is on page 9. Appeal court stops order restraining release of rivers allocations. That story is on page 3. Don't scrap Ministry of Information. Minister appeals to state governments. That story is on page 7 there. Why sane people must lead our entertainment industry, Miss Tenny. That story is on page 9. So who's been leading the entertainment industry this whole time?
I almost mentioned the name that would have caused plenty of problems, so I'm not gonna. It's a very sad headline. You talked about detainees eating feces. Brings questions of the rights of prisoners. And since today we're going to be talking about human rights, Judith, please remind me when we're speaking to our distinguished guests about this instance here regarding detainees in prisons and what their
rights
are. Very important. Moving on now. Sunday Tribune, if I'm not mistaken, Peter Obi to FG. You can't ask Nigerians to fast and be feasting. Says corruption has killed hard work in Nigeria. That's a phrase he's been using for about a year now, and this is true actually, very relative of the Nigerian instance. FG gets 3-year targets to migrate NECO WAEC exams to CBT. That's a new one for me. Afenifere caucus visits Farotimi in prison. Soldiers kill 181 terrorists in 1 week, says Defense Headquarters. This is on page 2. Congrats to the new Chief of Army Staff, but the numbers have been coming in the past 2 weeks. He's also made some international forum visits as well, and he has bandied about some of these numbers. One of them was into 6 digits, if I'm not mistaken, regarding the number of people who have surrendered and their families and all.
Right.
But my worry is that these numbers are becoming a bit, and I'm wondering if anybody's tracking these numbers, because they're just being reeled out every single week.
I trust our good friends at SBM Intelligence.
I'm hoping so. I'm hoping so, because these numbers are a lot, and when you put that against whether things are changing, the realities, you're not seeing
it begs
too
us
much
a number of questions.
happen.
Absolutely.
So I'm curious about these numbers. Still, the Daily Tribune, Saturday Tribune rather, we didn't give 325 million naira to APC, says the TET Fund. At the top for the Tribune, Wike gives his best to whatever he does, says Akpabio. FCT minister turns 57. Oh, book on him launched in Port Harcourt. I should not be here, Judith. I'm so sorry.
What are you
My
doing?
uncle's book is getting
What
launched.
Are you? Well,
Then he's 57. It's his birthday. I'm in the wrong place. Makinde involved our union in the appointment of over 19,000 teachers, says Oyo NUT chairman. That's it for the Saturday Tribune for this morning. What next? Do
we have the Saturday Vanguard. If we can just pull the Saturday Vanguard up there. There we go. It's Saturday morning. Let's move to our very first one there that jumps at you. 2027. Now I know. 2027, North Angry will look for alternatives. If Tinubu doesn't get it right, Shetima, Yerima, AFC, AYCF president. At the bottom there goes, people have suffered enough, but it's too early to conclude Tinubu has failed. We will continue to advocate decentralization until God gives us a rugged president. God-fearing. Yeah, the fonts are too small.
Yeah. I was going to help you, but I've got the same problem.
Yeah, the fonts are too small. Says those who stole trillions under Buhari are free today. That story is on page 10. At the top there, letter to Kemi Badnoch. No grief for anybody. Why she disowns Nigeria, prefers Yoruba heritage. That story is on page 22 and page 7 as well. Love the Saturday Vanguard. You guys should leave Kemi alone, all right? She's just playing the white man politics, all right? How about you mind your business? CAF Awards 2024. Hakimi challenges Lukman. You can find that story for all the football heads. You can find that story on page 18. Rivers, appeal court vacates order stopping allocations to state. That story is on page 7. Pandef asks Wike to intervene in Rita Lori Ogbebo's FCT land case. That story is on page 7 as well. At the bottom there, why Peter Obi tried to step into Afebalola's case with Farotimi. That story is on page 7. Tiwa Savage, all men have cheated on me. Lies hurt me more. That story is on page 20. Even Beyonce, they have cheated on Tiwa. Rest in the mighty name of Jesus. And right next to it, finally, for last headline here, hardship. Oyema calls for patience, says Tinubu will stabilize the economy. That story is on page 9. Pretty much all of the papers that we can take for today.
Yes, indeed. You queried the Badenoch thing. I was wondering why people are querying Badenoch for her decision to...
Oh, that's what I said. Like, I don't have any qualms with her doing what she's doing. Do you get what I mean? Like, I don't have...
In terms of perception and what she's putting out about Nigeria, or the lack of it.
So, you're asking what I feel about...
Yeah.
Oh, so let me see. So the thing is, how I feel about it is... Nigeria is not fair to us, to Nigerians. Nigeria is not fair to Nigerians. The elite has not been fair to Nigerians. If one person chooses to be contradictory and doesn't choose to be patriotic about Nigeria, I would not fault them or blame them.
Okay.
So I don't have any issues with her in terms of what her rhetoric is and what her perspective is about Nigeria. But what I do have an issue with is her anti-blackness in its entirety. That's what I have an issue with.
That's very new. We'll talk about this.
That's what I have an issue with.
I have to ask you.
Nigeria is not fair. So it's not been fair to you, to me, to a number of us. You know, the elite ruling party has not been fair to us. And if anyone decides to be as anti-Nigerian as they possibly can be, well, sugar to your tea. But my own is just don't be anti-black in the process. Come on, you're still black. You have a black hair, black feature, you're so black, you're blackity black, 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 black.
You're Yoruba.
Yeah, you're Yoruba.
Let's do a short break so we can commence with everything that we've got prepared for you for the Saturday edition of Breakfast Extra. We'll be back. Welcome back. Now, Ghana's 2024 general elections have once again placed the West African nation under global scrutiny as a beacon of democracy. Former President John Dramani Mahama emerged victorious, defeating Vice President Mahamudu Bawumia in a tightly contested race. Mahama's win well, marked the return of the National Democratic Congress to power, signaling a shift in the political landscape. Notable gains by the NDC include significant victories in constituencies like Yendi and Ayawaso, West Wugon, with prominent losses for the new Patriotic Party, the NPP, including high-profile figures such as Ursula Owusu Ukufo losing her seat. However, the elections were not without turmoil. Reports of violence marked the process, with incidents in Awutu Senya East resulting in fatalities and military interventions causing chaos at polling stations. Allegations of ballot irregularities as well and logistical failures, such as power outages during voting counting, and these further highlighted the challenges. While political leaders, including Vice President Bawumia, called for calm, these incidents underscore the fragility of democratic processes, even in well-regarded systems like the Ghanaian one.
Right. And so joining us to unpack the key lessons for Nigerian democracy in West Africa, we have Bernard Akede. He's a correspondent here with News Central Television. Bernard, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you for doing this with us this morning. You look as tired as I do, so let's just get into it straight away, shall we? I mean, from your experience covering the elections, this year has been the year of elections, let's just be honest, from Ondo to Edo, gubernatorial elections to the local government elections, plus the U.S. president's election, general elections, I beg your pardon, and now Ghana's general elections. There's Namibia, there's Senegal. This year has been the year of elections, in my opinion. But how would you describe the mandate of the Ghanaian people for the newly elected president? Was there a dominant theme or demand from voters?
Oh, of course. Good morning, Judith. Good morning, Mazino. Yes, there was a dominant, beg your pardon, a demand from the voters. Now, majority of the voters, it would seem, were ready to cast their vote and were ready for a change. If you remember, in the past 2 years, there have been like 2 major protests across Ghana, spearheaded particularly by the youth, complaining about there's still current government, if you want to put it that way, especially about the taxes that have been put in place several times. There have been taxes on so many things. As a matter of fact, if you go to Ghana now, you buy a drink, soda, a bottle of water, whatever it is, there's a small piece of paper stuck to the cap there with something that looks like a QR code that represents the taxes put on top of that. You're trying to transfer money, through some kind of electronic wiring. There's some taxes added to that. There's something they also call COVID tax. COVID is long gone, but there's still taxes being collected concerning COVID issues. Now besides the taxes, they complained about economic challenges. They complained about corruption and so many other things. And Ghanaians were literally tired of the current government and the ruling party. So they clearly wanted a change. So it was almost like a unanimous agreement by Ghanaians. And I believe that was what, culminated into the general votes that we saw, leading to such a victory, such a massive victory for the NDC, one that hasn't been seen in quite a very, very long time, in the history of Ghana. So yes, I would say it was the togetherness of the voices of Ghanaians that led to this dramatic election result that we saw eventually, that everybody is now talking about, added to so many other things that possibly we'll speak about.
Yeah, so speaking for democracy now, Ghana being a beacon for democracy for as long as I've known, what was it like when the announcements were made for the winners? How did the candidates conduct themselves? We saw the concession speeches. And how did the populace conduct themselves? And if you compare that to instances that you are used to, it doesn't have to be Nigeria, but if you want to use Nigeria as the comparison, go ahead.
Well, first of all, I think, there was tension here and there in Ghana, like you would have in many other African countries, right? Even though I would say the election was generally peaceful, except for, pockets of violence, like Judith did mention in her introduction. And then on Sunday morning, we woke up, and while we're still doing our round, we got the information that the current vice president was conceding, and he gave that speech to concede, which many believe was a very mature thing to do, and that was what made everything a lot easier as regards having violence, which could have happened, with supporters of both parties hoping that their own parties or their own candidates would win. And immediately after that, it was celebration all the way for the winning party, basically. Because remember, votes were still being counted, results were still coming in. immediately, I was in Kumasi, and from the place where we were, one of the collation centers, after we got that result, we went straight to the secretariat, the party secretariat of the NDC, and you probably saw some of those clips on Saturday last week. It was just celebration all through, through the streets of Kumasi. I heard that in parts of Accra it was the same, and all of that. Now, moving on, still to answer your question, the response to that eventually on Monday, when the final declaration was made, we were at the declaration center and it was celebration as well. Declaration was made smoothly. There were no issues. As a matter of fact, I think I want to agree with most Ghanaians saying that what made it so smooth was the concession of defeat by the current vice president, who was the flag bearer for the NPP. That just silenced the crowd eventually. Now, from the declaration center, we went to the personal or private office of the president-elect, that's John Dramani Mahama, and it was nothing short of a carnival. It was a frenzy there. There was a stage set. There was a huge riser where journalists from across the globe basically mounted their cameras, and then there were people all there just in celebratory mode. There had been songs composed for these candidates before, anyway, during the campaign period. So those songs kept blaring in the air. There were drones flying, pictures being taken, and all of that. So it was nothing short of a carnival. And then the man you're seeing on your screen, John Mahama, arrived with his running mate, the vice president-elect, whom I might add was also another first for Ghana. She's the first female vice chancellor in the whole country, and now going to be the first female vice president in the country as well. So you see, it was a frenzy. It was just celebration all through. And then when Mahama came and gave his acceptance speech as well, I think that just blew the crowd away, and that was preparation for the next 4 years to come.
Specifically, now I want us to address that concession speech by Bawumia. How critical was that speech? Why was it necessary that speech be made? Notice that there were still irregularities that were complained about. However, he still went on to make that speech. Now, taking sample, as we take lessons as Nigerians, how critical was it that he made that speech at the time that he did?
All right, I want to compare that speech to, and as an African, right, you would understand that not many African countries do you see this happen. Let's say we use Nigeria as an example. I think the only time I can remember this happened was when President Goodluck Jonathan conceded defeat, if I'm not mistaken. Now, we see more often than not, that during elections, the opposition party, as a matter of fact, after the elections, after the Electoral Commission of any country, or let's again Nigeria's example of Nigeria, announces the final results, the next thing that we hear from the losing party is we will go to court. Right. I think that concession speech, first of all, removed or eliminated the whole legal process that we probably would have seen following the elections. It also eliminated the chances of violence by party supporters, which may have occurred, like some Ghanaians did mention to us that day. It eliminated longer process of the election. I mean, the election was concluded on Saturday, and in less than 72 hours, by Monday evening, a winner was announced. There's the belief that it could have lasted longer than that. Leading to more time, leading to more resources being used by the Electoral Commission, leading to, as I mentioned, possible violence by voters and supporters, leading to court cases after the election, which is still more money being spent by Ghanaians. I think it would have been a whole chain reaction. The ripple effect would have been felt all across the entire country in different spheres and in different angles. But just by accepting defeat, all of that was cut short. And now Ghana is facing their challenges head on and deciding to move. As a matter of fact, excuse me, after the acceptance speech by John Dramani on Mahama on Monday, the transition committee was inaugurated on Wednesday, just 2 days after. Right, John Dramani Mahama was there. His party members were there, and the current president, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, was also there with certain persons trying to ensure that the country moves forward. So imagine what that has done is it has spearheaded, or rather, it has quickly pushed forth, the entire political process for Ghana, knowing that Ghanaians are willing to move ahead. And then guess what? Next month, January, I believe January 7th, is going to be the inauguration of the new president. So you can see how speedily everything is moving, because as the president-elect did say, there is no time. So that particular speech has pushed so many things in process, and everything is moving, I would say, for the betterment of the people of Ghana.
It's very interesting you're talking about John Mahama's speech, because I read an op-ed where somebody was criticizing the speech, and if you don't mind me just taking that, it said that it was myopic and it had no base. That why are events such as it being the first African country to win independence from colonial rule and having the first UN General Secretary from Africa, what was being celebrated in the speech. It said, why are these events held as achievements? The speech demonstrates a tragic lack of ambition and subservience to a Western world order. It is often said that the bane of African leadership is corruption, but again, I disagree. It is a lack of ambition that plagues our so-called leader. A leader that is ambitious on a local and global stage does not leave roads unbuilt, invest in education, and steal state funds, because they know these are the essentials for a strong nation. Until African leaders set their sights on global dominance or custodianship, nothing would change on the continent. That was an op-ed. I just took an excerpt from it. And it's very interesting when you put it side by side, the speech that he had with President Tinubu's speech as well. It really just sets the tone for what will come in the next 4 years of their presidency and administration. We saw that with Tinubu, we saw that with John Mahama, and you were talking about, the faith of Ghanaians. With the faith of Ghanaians in this administration, let's look at the voter turnout as well, right? Do you think that the voter turnout was fair? Do you think that, Ghanaians came out and en masse to vote? I mean, when we see the numbers, it's quite impressive. But what was your perception just looking at that election day, December 7th in Kumasi?
Okay, I'll quickly touch on the speech and then move to your question. I was there when that speech was made. I don't want to sound like a supporter of the party, but it was quite an impressive speech, I wouldn't lie. And the part where you touched on talking about the first UN Secretary General coming from Ghana, and all of that, I think that was just mentioned as an achievement for Ghana, not necessarily for the party. The president-elect did touch on several things that he thought would make sense for Ghanaians, talking about things he had started in his past term and that things he believed he would do, hammering on the fact that they do not have time. Remember, he's been there for one term before, 4 years, so he only has 4 years, and that's why he said that they will hit the ground running. And several things he said, but that's besides the point. Now, talking about voter turnout, voter apathy, that was one major thing I was looking out for when I went for this election. And like you did say, the numbers did tell the truth. If you ask me, people did come out to vote. Look, I was in Kumasi and I saw how party supporters, party agents ensured that people did come out to vote, that their votes did count. From as early as 7 a.m., electoral officers were out there doing their work, and the electorate, voters, were out as well, ensuring that they vote. It was so would I say, so active that the party supporters, they were so active that we could literally see them bringing disabled people, ensuring that these people cast their vote. I couldn't catch that on camera, but I was able to ask one of them. I said, "Where are you getting these people from?" And he said, "Charlie, we are going to their houses to bring them to make sure they cast their vote, because every vote counts." Now, that was something I thought was worthy of note, because we come from a country where the voters, the citizens are disillusioned. The citizens don't feel that their votes count anymore because of several things that have happened in the past. But in this case, in Kumasi, at least in Kumasi where I was, that statement really touched me. For them believing that their votes would count, ensure that they made sure that everybody who was of voting age, who had registered, right, and who was able to come out to vote, did come out to vote. In another place, I saw a young boy, and I put that on camera. It was on one of our social media platforms. A young boy led a visually impaired man to the polling unit, ensured that he had his thumbprint, he had his thumbprint done, and then took him to make sure that he cast his vote, helped him to cast his vote for both the parliamentary and the presidential area. So I think all of these things, no matter how little, trickled in to ensure that numbers that we saw was actually what we had on ground. So I think it's a thing of the people ensuring that they actually did want a change, and that was what we saw eventually, leading to the numbers we saw. I quickly like to chip this in as well concerning the numbers. I said this before, that even the Electoral Commission chairperson did state that there were 9 constituencies that they couldn't get results from as at the time of final declaration. However, upon calculation, it was shown that regardless of the fact that those 9 constituencies didn't bring their results in, whatever results coming from those 9 constituencies they would have had was inconsequential to the general outcome that they had, such that even if they added those 9 results to the second position, the person who was second position, that's Bawumia, it still would have been inconsequential and it still would have not been a significant challenge to John Mahama Dramani.
Wow. That was a lot, Bernard, but thank you very much. You actually captured it correctly.
Yeah, I mean, it's very, and I'm very thankful for that one. I mean, we also have to talk about election violence as we kind of wrap up this conversation, shall we? And just very, very quickly, we saw speedy response to the pockets of small electoral violence. But what was the difference for you? What stood out for you? Very quickly.
I think, first of all, again, in Kumasi where I was, I didn't get any reports of electoral violence, but in certain places, like you mentioned earlier, there were electoral violence. Even our colleague, Afia Hagen, was almost a victim of electoral violence somewhere in Accra where she was. It was pockets of violence in certain places. We had electoral commission officers assaulted in some places, electoral materials destroyed in some places, and I think there were a couple of fatalities here and there, but nothing compared, if we still want to compare, to what we saw here during our own election. And then there were speedy responses, like you clearly did state as well. The president-elect also made mention of that, calling it a shame that was seen in Ghana. But one important thing for me is that, you know, they were trying to see how to ensure that the persons who committed these atrocities will be brought to book. And I think that's one challenge that we have in this country. I don't know about you, but I don't remember any time where people who had committed electoral violence, or crimes during the election have been brought to book. We've seen some of these faces, even on live television, some of them spread across social media, but till today, I don't remember anybody's name who has been called, anybody who's been prosecuted, charged, or even sent to jail for electoral violence. Now, in Ghana, they said they were going to go after these persons and ensure that they are caught. Well, we're waiting to see if that will happen. But whether or not it does happen, they did mention it, they did address it. And then electoral violence, no matter how small or how large, it is violence. But compared to what we've seen, particularly here in Nigeria, it was just a fraction, of what we had seen. And they were going to, they clearly said that they will address it. I'm hoping that that would happen.
All right, Bernard, we have to make room for other segments. But thank you very much for giving us the details about the 2024 Ghana elections here. And by the way, on your social media, you put that thing where you were eating I can't remember what it was called, but next time it's 3 fingers in the soup, pull it out on the edge, scoop out,
and
then in your mouth.
Oh my goodness, Muzino. God,
now you know.
Golly.
Thank you very much, Bernard Katie. Can't wait to see you back in the office on Monday. Now, do stay tuned because we have more coming your way. We're going to be tackling some very interesting issues, only if you stay tuned here on Breakfast Extra.
And welcome back. The women of the All Farmers Association of Nigeria, AFAN, Abia State Chapter, have taken to the streets in protest, raising allegations of embezzlement against their union leaders. The funds and incentives intended to support their activities, they claim, have been misappropriated by those at the helm of the association. The grievances also extended to the alleged attempts by the Ministry of Agriculture to impose a new leadership on them without due process. Now, adding to their frustration, the women allege that members of their group were manhandled by officials of the Ministry of Agriculture during their peaceful demonstration. Now, led by their spokesperson, Precious Nwaoma, the women are calling on Governor Alex Oti to intervene and sanction those responsible. The chief press secretary to the governor, Okoha Njoku, has promised to relay their concerns to the governor. Now, let's take a closer look at the unfolding events in the report filed by our correspondent, Chiwe Ugeli. Unfortunately, we cannot bring that report to you at this time.
So joining us is Chinwe Ugeli herself. She'll be telling us right from the horse's mouth. Chinwe, you're welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. We're also going to be joined by Precious Nwaoma, who is a member and of the Association of Farmers as well. Chinwe, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. So, we'd like to know what the most compelling moments during your coverage of this protest was. Chinwe, please.
It was having that number of women, come together to say that they are tired of the leadership they've had over time, and they wanted to be given the opportunity to choose who leads them, So basically what the women were saying was that they hadn't received what was due to them over the years. And that was basically because of the kind of leadership they've had. And they are blaming the leaders, actually, of misappropriating and channeling what was provided by the government, be it incentives like farm implements, farm seedlings, and fertilizers to aid in their farm. So they believe that the leaders have not really represented them well. So it was having that number of women who belong to this association come together with one voice to say, we are tired, we want to change our style in how things are done in that association.
Right. Now, if we still have the head of the women's, there we go. Ms. Precious, let me ask you to just help us share the grievances of the women protesting, and so far, whether or not the Chief Press Secretary was able to relay your message to the government, and what are they saying at this time?
Thank you. I'm Lady Precious Owoma, the woman leader of All Farmers Association of Nigeria at the state chapter. Yes, we had that protest concerning the leadership of that organization. As citizens of Abia State, we are deeply concerned about the mismanagement of agricultural funds and loans. This is not just a policy issue. It is a matter of just integrity and human dignity. As you can see, more than 500 women came out that day for this protest. That's to show you that Abia women, it has not been easy for us, not getting what other states are getting in our group. So, farmers in Abia State, we work tirelessly to provide for our family and our community. But despite our hard work, we are often denied access to resources we need to thrive. This includes adorable credit and loans, access to market and fair prices, support for sustainable agricultural practices. Our governor, Dr. Alex Chioma Oti, is a governor that I would say that loves agriculture very, very much. About a few months ago, he trained over 300 youths that went to Nasarawa for agriculture. And he has been supporting the farmers in the state. I'm sure he has given loans for small scale agriculture and businesses. But sometimes even federal allocations to farmers has been siphoned in Abia State. I'm sure that His Excellency. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
Loud
we can
and
hear
clear.
you.
So
We wanted to ask
okay.
you. We wanted
His
to ask you,
Excellency.
Ms. Precious Woma, we wanted to ask you regarding the accused opposition, what their response has been since after the protest. Have they come out to say anything regarding the accusations that have been levied against them?
You mean His Excellency?
The leadership, the current leadership of the association.
No, they haven't said anything. Instead, they went behind us. The information I got yesterday is that they were planning to conduct a secret, what did I say, a secret election against us, but it has been cancelled. His Excellency has taken action. He has appointed some of his cabinet members to look into the problem, the issues we are facing in the Ministry of Agriculture here in Abia State. So he has appointed people to look into the issue, and more especially to stop whatever elections they are trying to conduct.
Okay, Chinwe, real quick, we're out of time, but I wanted to ask you, Chinwe, was the protest effective, seeing that the governor's attention has been caught? Would you say it was effective? Chinwe, please.
Secretary did relay, because the governor didn't mention it yesterday night when we had a media chat. If he had that information, probably he would have said something, or probably because of that information, he set up the committee that is now looking into the situation in that association.
All right. Well, Chinwe, this is where we have to put a pin on this discussion. We will be following up, and we'll definitely be coming to you if there's more development and update to this story as it's still developing. But many thanks, Chinwe, for bringing us first-hand insight into this developing story, and also thanks to you, Ms. Precious, for giving us more update on this. Well, that's where we'll close the curtain for this discussion. Let's bring you breakfast headlines here on News Central Television. I am Judith Atibi, and we'll begin with security matters at this time, as residents of Pawishi village in Kaimai district of Biliri local government area have said no fewer than 5 persons were murdered during the recent invasion by suspected headsmen. The community members, in a phone call, faulted earlier reports which stated that only Malam Yusuf Akwara was killed in the attack. The violence began Wednesday afternoon and culminated in the burning of over 250 houses as of Thursday morning. A statement signed by the State Police Public Relations Officer ASP Buhari Abdullahi had said a combined team of police officers and 301 artillery regiment led by Area Commander Biliri was mobilized to contain the situation. And still on security, the Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Musa, has deployed a Special Operations Brigade to Sokoto and Kebbi states as part of efforts to eradicate the Lukarawa sect from the region. The deployment is part of the ongoing operations aimed at eliminating the self-acclaimed jihadist group operating in 2 northwestern states. According to a statement released in Sokoto, the deployment seeks to boost the successes achieved under Operation Forest Sanity 3, codenamed Chase Lukarawa Out. Addressing the troops on Friday, Brigadier General Ibikunle Ajose, the General Officer commanding 8th Division of the Nigerian Army and Commander of Sector 2, Operation Fasan Yama, conveyed the directives of the theater commander, Major General Oluyinka Shoyele. He tasked the troops with ensuring the total dismantling of the Lukarawa sect in the affected states. Away from that, the Appeal Court Abuja has set aside all orders restraining the Central Bank of Nigeria and the Accountant General of the Federation from releasing funds to the Rivers State government. The 3-member panel, presided by Justice Haman Barka, held that the subject matter was not within the jurisdiction of the court relating to the revenue of the state. While allowing the appeal of the Rivers State government, the appellate court also set aside all the orders made by Justice Joyce Abdul Malik, stating that it was unconstitutional for her to make orders restricting Rivers State government to receive funds due to the state from its consolidated revenue fund. The appellate court held that the lower court overreached itself and did not have the jurisdiction to entertain the matter. The former governor of Kogi State, Yahaya Bello, has been granted bail to the tune of about 500 million naira by the Federal High Court in Abuja. Bello, who is facing a 19-count charge of alleged money laundering, breach of trust and misappropriation of public funds amounting to 80.2 billion naira, appeared in court before Justice Emeka Nwoti for a resumed hearing on his bail application. News Central's Joshua Imarayi was at the court and filed this report. Take a look.
The charge was brought against the former Kogi State Governor Yahaya Bello by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. At the resumed hearing, the EFCC counsel Kemi Pinheiro informed the court of the prosecution's intention to withdraw a previous application for an abridgment of the arraignment date because the application had been overtaken by events. The counsel to the defendant did not object the request by the EFCC, which was duly granted by the trial judge, Justice Emeka Nwite, striking out the application. Upon reading the 19-count charge, the former governor, Bello pleaded not guilty. After hearing the bail applications from both counsels, the judge granted bail to the former governor to the tune of 500 million naira with 2 sureties and like sum. Bello is also required to deposit his international passport with the court. The case was then subsequently adjourned to February 24th, 28th, March the 6th and 7th, 2025 for trial. In Abuja for News Central, I am Joshua Imarayi.
And now to politics. The Labour Party has gone to court over the defection of 6 members of the House of Representatives from the party to the ruling All Progressives Congress APC. Akangbe Iliya, who represents just south and just east of Plateau State, teamed up with the APC on Thursday, adding to the swelling number of House of Representatives members who were elected under the Labour Party leaving the party. The Labour Party, in a statement by its spokesman, Obiora Efo, described Iliya's defection to the APC as unfortunate, while admitting that the Constitution guarantees citizens the right to freedom of association. The party said Section 68G of the 1999 Constitution is emphatic on when to defect and what happens when a lawmaker sponsored by a political party decides to jump ship. Following the defection, the party said it was going to take legal action against the lawmakers. Polytechnic lecturers under the aegis of Academic Staff Union of Polytechnics, ASUP, have suspended their 2-week strike after reaching a new agreement with the federal government. The union directed its members to resume work across the country on Monday, December 16th. In a statement signed by ASUP President Sharma Pancha on Friday in Abuja, ASUP explained that the decision to suspend the strike followed a new Memorandum of Understanding, MOU, reached at a conciliation meeting with the Federal Ministry of Labor and Employment on 9th December. Among the demands of the union include a violation of the Federal Polytechnics Act, non-review of the contentious and suspended document entitled Schemes of Service for Polytechnics and Conditions of Service. Nigeria's Minister of Foreign Affairs has tasked ECOWAS member states to work towards creating trade and investment opportunities for citizens of the sub-region. The minister, while speaking at the 93rd ordinary session of the ECOWAS Council of Ministers in Abuja, expressed concerns and confidence, that the meeting will help the ministers make for-reaching recommendations for the ECOWAS authority heads of state and government to create radical changes that will improve the lives of citizens. Also, the president of the ECOWAS Commission pledged the commitment of the Commission to work towards effecting positive changes in the lives of citizens of the sub-region.
Creating trade and investment opportunities will yield substantial benefits and position our community to reap significant rewards, thereby improving the lives of our populace. I'm confident that convening this session at this period provides us with yet another opportunity to engage in constructive deliberations with purposefulness and amity to enable us come up with important recommendations for our heads of state and government that will propel our community forward.
I would like to recommit the Commission and the institutions of ECOWAS. I would like to recommit our commitment, underscore our commitment to working tirelessly for our region and the citizens of our region.
The General Officer Commanding 3 Armored Division of the Nigerian Army, Major General Abdusalam Abubakar, has emphasized the need for the empowerment programs that will improve the lives of officers and men of the division, as well as the barrack community. The GOC, who doubles as the commander, Operation Safe Haven, was speaking at the division's headquarters during a one-day empowerment seminar to draw the attention of participants, especially the personnel, to the need for the seminar. News Central's Chizoba Anyowe completes the report.
Life after retirement from active service has been seen by many as a difficult one, leaving retirees at the mercy of no one, except being dependent on their family members and loved ones alike. Pension may not be enough for most of them to sustain their livelihood as against while in active service. This is why these participants are gathered under this roof to gain the knowledge of fish farming, one of the skills under agriculture that personnel are allowed to explore while in and out of service.
As we gather in this auditorium, we are reminded of the realities of our current economic landscape, where often our earnings do not keep pace. Today, as we delve into the world of fish farming, a venture that not only promises self-sufficiency, but also empowers our families in the cantonment during and after service years.
In line with the new Chief of Army Staff's mandate of empowering and improving the lives of personnel, these stakeholders are committed in ensuring not just officers of the military are well engaged, but also their dependents.
Accents are coming from children, from the Republic, from Ghana, to come to our homes to lay tiles, POP, bricklayer, and all those things. It's a shame for us in Nigeria. This president does not want that to happen again. He also talked about agripreneur. He wants us to turn a lot of Nigeria to entrepreneur in agriculture. And that's why what we are doing today is very important. Life after retirement, what next? Life before retirement, what next? Is a great opportunity for us today to be in front of young people, to open the door to see catfish business and tilapia is very rich. I want to use this opportunity to congratulate the GOC for this initiative, to thank you for availing yourself to lend the element in order to improve the income of the officers, to prepare their mind towards retirement, to improve their livelihood, as well as generate revenue to the system.
With this intervention, personnel are expected to keep the spirit alive even in the face of retirement. In Jos for News Central, Chizoba Anyowe.
Many thanks to Chizoba Anyowe for that report. And that's all we can take at this hour. I am Judith at TBU. Switch gets back to Breakfast Extra. Stay here. And you're welcome back. Let's get started with our big story for today. Now, Nigeria's judicial landscape has been thrust into the spotlight once again as activist and lawyer Dele Farotimi remains in detention after being denied bail in the defamation suit filed by legal icon Afe Babalola. Farotimi, known for his outspoken views on governance and justice, now finds himself at the center of a controversial legal battle that many argue has far-reaching implications for freedom of expression in the country. Now, this case highlights ongoing tensions within Nigeria's judicial system, particularly how defamation laws can be wielded against dissenting voices. As debates rage over the balance between protecting reputations and upholding free speech, Farotimi's plight raises a number of questions about the judicial fairness afforded to activists who challenge the status quo.
So to help us unpack this, we are joined by our esteemed guest here, and that's none other than Adam Wahab. He is a senior associate in dispute resolution practice at Olaniwa Ajay LP. You are welcome. Good to have you here.
Thank you so much for joining us.
I'm happy to be here.
So as a lawyer, you're going to help us unpack all of this that's happening right now, because everybody's agog with everything that's happening regarding the case, especially when you compare it to other high-profile cases that are happening right now. People argue about the heavy-handedness of this issue, especially that it seems to be a civil one. So please do give us Give us some legal explanations to what we are seeing here.
Okay, well, first, I must let you know that it would be nice to consider this devoid of emotions. So let's look at law as it is. So as a lawyer, I know that every citizen has the right to freedom of expression.
Right.
And that right includes the right to hold any opinion and even to impact such an opinion or the view the person may hold. However, the same provision of the Constitution makes restrictions of this right. In fact, you agree that there is no right anywhere in the world that is absolute. So this constitutional right that is embedded in the Constitution is not absolute, and there are certain restrictions. And one of it is that the right may be restricted by any law that is validly made by the National Assembly, and that law has to be justifiable, reasonable in a democratic society such as Nigeria. Now, the question then is, the laws under which this person is being held, are these laws first, are they laws validly made in Nigeria? And then the next question is, are they reasonably justifiable in a democratic society? Now, the question of defamation can give rise to either a civil liability or a criminal liability. Now, as to the civil liability, it's just an issue between two private citizens. But when it comes to the criminal element of it, it's no longer an issue between two private entities. The nominal complainant, who is the person against whom the defamatory statement has been made, will have engineered the instrument of the state to kickstart a criminal proceedings against the person who have alleged to make the defamatory statement. Okay. And then that would then lead to a criminal proceedings where we have the person brought before the court in a criminal charge. But the question is, yes, we have laws that criminalizes defamation in certain states, not even everywhere in Nigeria, because some states have moved on. Yes.
So even these laws have their different ramifications in the different states.
Yes.
Now, you noted that it's a civil, it could be a civil or criminal case. Where does it cross the line into being criminal, especially considering the anatomy of this situation right now? He wrote a book.
Yes.
It was published.
Yes.
It's on sale.
Yes.
So is it the writing of it and publishing of it that makes his expression of freedom of expression a crime?
So to answer this question, you have to look at the ingredients of what constitutes a civil defamation and a criminal defamation. And you just need to examine the statutes that made these provisions. For criminal proceedings, it's essentially the same as the ingredients you have for civil in terms of was a publication made by the defendant, was the publication disparaging of the reputation of the nominal complainant, has anybody read, downloaded, or utilized that material, and as indeed as the publication has the effect of disparaging the character and the reputation of the nominal complainant. Now, these are the ingredients, but the difference again in this is that the standard that the law has imposed on the state, the standard of proof of each of these ingredients is quite higher than what is required in a civil proceedings where it's between two private individuals. The standard now has to be proved beyond reasonable doubt each of these ingredients for the defendants to be held criminally liable for the alleged act of defamation. But I must clarify that historically, it is a crime everywhere in the country, but some states have evolved. For instance, Lagos State has amended its own criminal laws, so also Ekiti State and one other state, I think Edo State, you cannot file a charge of defamation against any person because it's no longer an offense. And as far as the Constitution is concerned, under Section 36, nothing is an offense except it is proscribed as an offense by a statute. So if at the time of the alleged act, there is no law that has proscribed that act that you are complaining about, then it is not an offense, it's not a crime. In Lagos State, in Ekiti State, and in Edo State, there is no such thing known as criminal defamation.
Now, I've been informed that David Udeh, investigative journalist, joins us now live as well. David, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you for doing this with us this morning. I mean, you've heard from our guest here in the studio, Adam Wahab, and he's talked about really the law regarding defamation and, libel and the rest. But I would like to come to you, in terms of your work and experience covering activist cases and just really looking at the judicial system from your own point of view as an investigative journalist. How are you going to assess this matter, this case, and just in terms of, dissent, and the varying voices of dissent. Do you see this being a judicial pushback? Do you see this being just Nigeria and its system, displaying its ugly head as usual?
So I actually put out a newsletter about this sometime last week, where the central arguments that I made in that newsletter was that the problem that I have with this case and others like it in the Nigerian judicial system now is not so much the fact that people in power they've discovered the use of so-called SLAP litigation. SLAP stands for strategic lawsuits against public participation. That's a thing around the world. That it's in fact, SLAP lawsuits are the most popular jurisdiction for SLAP lawsuits is the UK, because under UK law, the burden of proof is on the defendants and not on the claimant. So as far as that goes, Nigeria is nothing special there. Where I have an issue is that, unlike everywhere else, the specifics of the law involved don't seem to exist. And what I mean by that is, it seems as if, depending on which side of the bed you wake up on in Nigeria, whether as a lawyer or as a judge or as someone with money who can influence lawyers and judges to get certain actions done in your behalf, you can have the law effectively interpreted in any way at all that you see fit, which basically means that Nigeria doesn't really have laws as it stands. Take this case, for example, where you had someone who wasn't in hiding. He lives in Lagos. Everybody knows where he is. This book has been out since June, I think it was June 5th that this book was released. I know this because we actually exchanged messages just a couple of days before the book came out. I remember I was in Addis Ababa, he was in Lagos, and we had a long conversation about it. And after the book was released, he did a small media tour. He did an appearance on, Shehu Kimberly's podcast, the Wage Show. And he was constantly talking about it on his YouTube channel, on his social media. There was nothing about this that was a secret, right? This wasn't something that, this was published in some corner of the internet and then somebody went somewhere to hide or something. This was in the open, right? And there was no pushback, there was no action taken, nothing. And then all of a sudden, coincidentally, the month where he launches a sort of political action campaign, because if you recall, shortly before he was arrested, he had put together a small group of journalists and civil society figures and political activists. I was part of that group, by the way. And the purpose of that group was to put pressure on the legislature and the government to enact some form of electoral reform. So specifically that the Electoral Amendment Act 2022 should be amended again, this time to state very clearly that electronic transmission of results is mandated and that independent candidacy is permitted. That was what he was working on. And as soon as, he was suggesting, even publicly, that as a way of pushing this campaign, that Nigerians should stage a sit-at-home sort of civil disobedience protest on the 3rd of December. He was arrested on the 2nd of December, which is an incredible coincidence. So it just strikes me that depending on whether the people in power consider you to be enough of a threat or enough of an irritation, in Nigeria now, somebody can just wake up and have a law. It doesn't even have to be a law that even exists, as we've seen in the case of Dele Farotimi now. There is no law in Ekiti under which somebody can be effectively extradited across state lines to come stand trial, criminal trial for defamation. No such law exists in Ekiti State. And yet, the lawyers involved, by the way, these are not, ambulance chasing lawyers. These are senior advocates of Nigeria, more than one of them. The judge, the magistrate involved, the Nigeria police force, everybody colluded to extradite somebody from one jurisdiction to another state jurisdiction to face trial under a law that does not exist. So the danger I am seeing in all of this is that effectively Nigeria is entering on this sort of uncharted territory in its history, where effectively there is no set of legal standards that the country is actually governed by. Nothing you do in Nigeria is unambiguously legal
or illegal. I think we actually started seeing this precedent set last year when, during in the name of the post-election
Election
petition
tribunal.
tribunals, where all manner of judgments were passed, where things that we thought that were stated very clearly in plain English, the judges gave some very incredible interpretations. We had always understood, for example, 36 states and the FCT to mean one thing, and then all of a sudden the legal definition of the word "and" went all the way to the Supreme Court. And then the law was effectively changed. It was effectively changed by the judge's interpretation in a way that it has never been interpreted before.
Setting precedents.
That was the thing.
Yeah.
The law of the law of double nomination, which is also very, very clearly written, it was interpreted in a different way. The judge gave an incredible judgment. The law of dual citizenship, the law of disclosure of such things, on everything you can imagine, was stood on his head to ensure that a predetermined outcome was arranged. So that was the precedent that was set. So now, effectively, we're at a point in Nigeria where whatever is written in the law books doesn't matter. Even if you are a lawyer who has, you know your stuff, right? You've read the Constitution back and forth 257 times. You know all the legal statutes and criminal codes and everything. You cannot expect to win an argument based on points of law in Nigeria anymore, because the judge or the judiciary basically has a free hand to do absolutely whatever the hell it wants, and nobody can do anything about it. There is basically no judicial oversight, meaningful judicial oversight. So now we're going to keep seeing more and more cases like this, where as soon as somebody who is seen to be a dissenter or who is seen to be an irritant to those in power develops enough of an audience, enough of a platform, and the people in power decide to teach this person a lesson, they don't really have to do much anymore. All they have to do now is just, tap the SAN or the judge working for them and interpret a law that says 2 + 2 is 4, can be effectively rewritten through the interpretation of a judge now to say that 2 + 2 is 57. And we can't do anything about it. The judge can say that this is a cow, and say that no, legally, this is now a Starlink space rocket. And you can't do anything about it.
Just a second, David.
Right, David, I wanted to cut you there because we still have Adam here in the studio, right? But I'm going to come to you later on to ask about the denial of the bill, which has now been widely criticized. At first, they gave a 50 million naira bill and also a shorty in like sum as well. But now that has also been denied. But let's come back to the studio to talk to Adam.
Now, Adam, you noticed something from before regarding the ambiguity of this law. Yeah. And then also, David also touched on the arbitrary nature with which this case of defamation, the use of the word defamation is being used. Now, if we can get clarity. Now, there is no law as is being touted right now regarding this case. Am I correct? Is that what you're saying regarding defamation?
So, in fact, this gives me an opportunity to clarify. No,
yes, please.
And I bet to disagree with David. The state can choose to prosecute any person for any offense anytime. There is no limitation of time. There's no bar as to when they can decide to wake up and prosecute a person once there is evidence, once they have a complainant, and once the investigation has been concluded. Now, as to the procedure, this person is a lawyer. He knows his right, but he knows there's a process. If a person is brought before a court under a law that does not exist, the judge has to allow the process, and he knows what to do through his lawyers.
Adams, once again, confirm. Are you saying this law does not exist in Ekiti or in Lagos State?
There are two laws. There is another law called the Cybercrime Act. Now, that one talks about making online statements that it's all about cyber stalking. Okay. And in fact, to give credence to the Judiciary and the National Assembly, based on some interpretation of that law, the National Assembly has had to even amend the Act in 2024 to take out the aspect that talks about defamation directly. But if you look at section 24 sub 1B of the current Cybercrimes Act as currently is today, it is under that law that this person has been arraigned at the Federal High Court. Now, talking about the one at the Magistrate Court, he knows the process. If I'm his counsel, I know what to do. And I can tell you that that objection has been raised as to the jurisdiction of the court, and it just to allow the court to make a pronouncement on it. I don't subscribe to an open condemnation of our judicial system.
Okay.
If a judge has done something right, just last month, the NJC, they came out, they criticized and warned, even sanctioned certain judges for everything has a procedure. You have to follow the process. That's my opinion.
Wait for the courts.
Yes, wait for the court to make a decision.
Even if we note that these laws are still a bit ambiguous.
And even if you are aggrieved, there is an appeal. And if you think the judge has misconducted him or herself, you know the right channel.
So let's talk
and
about,
the NJC are doing what they should do.
Let's talk about the collusion now with the Nigerian police force. Now, this was a case filed in Ekiti, and they had to come all the way to Lagos here to make an arrest. It was the
carted him away.
Yeah, and carted him away all the way to Ekiti by road. Now, is this legal?
Yes, all I can say is that that the course of action arose where every single download is made. If you download this book in Oyo State, if you download and read it in Ekiti State, if you access it in Abuja, all of those courts can have jurisdiction if there is a law that prescribes it. For instance, if there is a defamation law, or if that same act constitutes an offense under the Cyber Crimes Act that I have just mentioned. Now, the process of bringing somebody from one jurisdiction to another one is a police process. It's a process of arrest. How do you arrest somebody from outside your state and bring it to another state for prosecution? It has something to do with court. It's a process within the police. Okay. I know if a police wants to arrest me and they come from Abuja, they first have to report to headquarters in Lagos and to nearest police station to my residence to make their report there, and then it's a process, it's an internal process with the police. So I'm not that I'm defending.
No, of course.
But I just want everybody to have a clear idea. That's a process.
We need
and we all talk about democracy, and at the heart of democracy is rule of law, and the rule of law is our laws as they are today.
So wait, did the police contravene any laws themselves? Noting that you've just said that if I'm going to be arrested from Ekiti State, for instance, this first of all has to be a report at the Lagos State Police Command by that whichever jurisdiction that police force is coming from before I'm arrested. In fact, they have to do it in tandem. Now, in this case, was that the case?
Nobody has said that was not done. And if that's the case, then you can take it up with them.
Right.
Yes.
Let me come to you, David, and talk about the denial of bail. I set the tone earlier, so we're just going to get into it. There's now been denial of bail. At first, they set the bail to 50 million naira and shorty in like sum. And now he's now been denied bail. It has now raised a lot, widely criticized by those on social media. You know, critics alike, they've all criticized that move. What's your take?
This ties into what I already said about how essentially the law in Nigeria now has become something that is completely subjective. There are no set fixed standards for anything because to my understanding, and we have a lawyer in the studio, so I'm sure he can confirm this, to my understanding, whether you call it civil defamation or criminal defamation, whatever type of defamation case that it is, it's a bailable offense in Nigeria. So for the states, to my understanding, the state magistrate, the magistrate in Ekiti had already granted bail, which was fair enough. And then you have this thing called lawfare, where you have this multiplicity of spurious cases being filed, basically to the effect of just tying the person up in the court system with the goal of just keeping him in prison. Because to my understanding, that is what is going on here. There isn't actually any desire for any justice or whatever. The entire point of this is to punish Dele Farotimi, keep him in prison over the Christmas and New Year period, and drain him financially. That's what the entire purpose of this is, right? This is not the first time that I've seen something like this in this line of work, right? He's probably the most high-profile person that this has happened to, but this is something that has been happening with quite some regularity over the past decade. So this is just a continuation of what I was referencing earlier about this pattern of the Nigerian judiciary effectively having no real oversight, or the Nigerian judiciary, in fact, being sort of almost puppeted by the executive. It's whatever the executive wants that the judiciary just does, right? I don't think that if you were to find this exact kind of case, right? I'm not even going to use the example of some, US or some, jurisdiction that you might look up to. This exact kind of case in South Africa or in Kenya, this wouldn't have lasted 20 minutes in court. At the very least, for the purpose of a bail hearing. This wouldn't have lasted 20 minutes in court. In Nigeria, this has turned into a huge soap opera, a huge production. And then you're now hearing things like him being charged with treason. because apparently that's also the new thing, the new fad in town, because words don't mean anything in the Nigerian legal practice anymore. You can just throw things around and hope that something sticks eventually. And bear in mind that treason is a capital offense in Nigeria. It carries the death penalty. So is someone genuinely saying that Dele Farotimi has done something that is deserving of execution, summary execution, death? Does that make any sense? But this is what is being argued in court, and the judges are entertaining it. So at this point, you can't even blame the lawyers or the people who are behind the lawyers for whatever shenanigans and games are involved. The Nigerian judiciary has a basic problem with respect for its own profession and basically, professional ethics and standards. That's the way I see it, because
right. David,
now we're effectively in a situation where...
David,
sorry, go ahead.
As you were talking about, ethics and standards, it just brought to fore about what's currently going on with the FCT minister, Nyesom Wike, building quarters for members of the judiciary in Abuja, and what that says. Now, I know that the president for the NBA, Osigwe, if I'm correct, Afam Osigwe, has completely criticized that move by the FCT, saying that the government officials should not be doing that. That should not be their judiciary. That should not be their jurisdiction. They should not be doing that. Do you think that moves like that, where it comes to coveted concern and of the welfare of officers of the judiciary, is somewhat putting strings on the judicial system?
I think that is exactly what it is, and it's not the first time that. In fact, it's very unsubtle now. It's just a fact, I think, that is visible to the blind and audible to the deaf now, that the judiciary is effectively owned by the executive. So on paper, there are three independent arms of government: the executive, legislature, and the judiciary. What we saw during the last administration was the total capture of the legislative, which persists to date. And what we're seeing now is the total capture of the judiciary. So effectively, Nigeria is no longer a constitutional democracy as you understood it with three independent arms of government. It's now essentially a monarchy that holds elections every 4 years. And there's one man at the top and his tiny group of people that actually make all of the decisions. So, which would simply lend further credence to the entire premise of Dele Farotimi's book to begin with, because that's where all of this stems from, supposedly. The central argument.
The irony of it is that the title is now. I said the irony of it is now the title is now seeming like a self-fulfilling prophecy, so to speak.
That's exactly the issue. The central argument that was made in the book. By the way, for those who haven't read the book, the book was not about Afe Babalola. Right. The book was about a wider issue within the Nigerian judiciary. Yes, names were mentioned. Yes, specific situations were referenced, but it was not a book about Afe Babalola and what happened in 2012 or 2013. It was much bigger than that. The central premise of the book was that the Nigerian legal system has a foundational problem. The Nigerian legal system has been thoroughly compromised. So the title of the book was actually sort of clever play on words, because what he meant by criminal justice system, he wasn't referring to the criminal justice system as it exists. He was using the word criminal to describe the justice system. So Nigeria and its criminal justice system. So he was describing the Nigerian justice system as a criminal. That's what the book was trying to put across. And I think it's very instructive. It's very instructive that everything that he tried to explain, in so many words in the book, is exactly what is playing out now. I'm sure in his prison cell, he probably will be having a chuckle or two, knowing the kind of person that he is, because everything that he tried to put out in his book, which, by the way, wasn't even selling that well. Most Nigerians weren't even aware of this book until a few days ago, but now everyone is getting a front row seat to a live action demonstration of everything.
Just a second, David. First of all, thank you very much for bringing our notes to that clever use of double entendre there. I didn't even realize it myself. I'm only just realizing it now, and I've seen the book from before. Well, thank you very much for bringing that to know. But I want to come back to the studio here with Adams Wahab. Now, Adams, let's talk about something other people, everybody's been arguing about regarding the swiftness with which this case is being carried through. The arrest, court, boom, boom, boom. Then also the fact that he's been denied bail after it was offered from before. What do you make of this swiftness, the denial of bail?
Well, it's about, I think, the nominal complainant, but again, I won't dwell so much on that. It even allows the defendant, to have an early day in court, and as opposed to having a child hanging over his neck for a long time. When the process is swift, it means you are afforded the opportunity to defend yourself as quickly as possible.
So it's a good thing.
So it's a good thing as far as I'm concerned.
But then the denial of bail.
Yes.
Let me add an addendum to that. Let's note that there's also another high-profile case currently going on in Nigeria, and that is Yahaya Bello, who saunters into court wearing his white on white. The white lion is here. Finally, we find him after a couple of months. Now, he's been afforded this luxury when it comes to the processes going on in court. This is what people argue, not my words. However, when you put the two cases side by side, him not in handcuffs and Dele Farotimi led into court under heavy security and handcuffs, there's a certain level of disparity, especially when compared to the crime, in quote. Now, he's also been given bail, and I'm talking about Yahaya Bello, who's been in court for alleged 150 million naira fraud, and Farotimi is just a case of defamation. So, and he's been denied bail. So what gives the disparity?
800 billion naira.
What,
800 billion naira fraud.
Yeah.
So see, I note that the first time Yahaya Bello's case came up in court, the bail was not taken. It was declared premature, and they had to refile. So it's the same process, and each case is determined based on the peculiar facts. The facts of the case are different. I'm not privy to the grounds upon which the defendant, for instance, sought for bail. And the court has to exercise its own discretion. And discretion is exercised based on the peculiar facts and circumstances of this case. And there are no two cases that are exactly the same.
Could you do us a favor and explain exactly what the court meant by it being premature?
Premature.
Yeah, okay. So before it was formally arraigned, the bail application was filed. No.
They were working ahead of time.
Yes. So you wait for arraignment and then make your application for bail.
They were moving faster than their shadow.
Yeah, so it also depends on his own strategy for defending himself. I know you can have different lawyers, different strategies.
And what about
the procedure is essentially the same, and you can expect that the judiciary at the end of the day will do a fair job.
Now,
let's give that opportunity, that fairness to the judiciary. Whoever the judge is under a constitution, and he knows that court is not the final court. The party still has the right to go on appeal, even on the issue of bail. If I'm denied bail, I know what to do. That's not the end of the story.
So regarding the case of their appearance at court, and the format it took, the heavy presence of security with Farotimi and the not so much when it comes to Yahaya Bello. Yahaya Bello did not come to court with handcuffs on.
It's a question of the law. The law is that if the police have reasons to believe that this defendant is likely to struggle with them or to attempt to escape.
I'm telling you the law.
I'm just telling you what the law is.
Of course.
I'll let Judith, please.
But that's what the law says.
You know where I was going.
If the police believe or has reasonable basis to suspect that this person may want to escape or struggle or may not cooperate, that's the law. Now,
Judith,
what has made the police to make that decision, I'm not privy to it.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting, right, that the person who has been in hiding for months, I beg your pardon, that have disappeared into thin air and somewhat appeared out of nowhere.
And has the potential to disappear.
And that was the potentiality of that, of this person disappearing is not put in handcuffs, so it does not disappear and appear, right? But then you decide to handcuff someone else who did a press release or a press conference before his arrest, saying that there's a case that's already been filed against him in Ekiti. It's been trumped up. He doesn't know what's going on.
And he's not running?
He's not running. He made that very clear.
On that,
and that's a gentleman in every sense of the word.
My response is simple. On that, even high, requires an explanation for the police. The police owes each and every one of us an explanation as to why these two cases are treated the way they have done based on the antecedent. So they have to explain to us why this man was treated this way and this man was not treated this way. But the law is what I stated it to be, what it is.
Let's bring Unde into this discussion. David, you're watching us from there. You're seeing how this is unfolding. What's your take on just the disparity of treatment, the format of it from Yahaya Bello and Dele Farotimi?
It simply shows who the Nigerian ruling establishment considers to be a threat and who is part of that ruling establishment. Because even before any case with Yahaya Bello has commenced, I think based on precedent, we already know how that case is likely to end. So, people like me aren't even, wasting our energy paying much attention to that, because we know we've seen this before with Hadi Sirika. After all the rigmarole and song and dance, it was then very quietly revealed that he had to go treat his sick mom in the US, and now he's out of the country, and that case is gone. We know that. So, it's not going to be any different with Yahaya Bello. But obviously with Dele Farotimi, whom the establishment considers to actually be a political threat, a threat to its power because of his work awakening the consciousness of people, which will eventually lead to political action, political revolution, which the ruling establishment does not want to hear, then obviously they're going to treat him like he's a petty criminal that has been caught stealing a goat in a market. This is what they do. Part of the tactic is not just trying to tie him up in prison and exhaust him financially and emotionally. It's also to humiliate him. This is the tactic that was learned actually from the colonial governments, right? So as I'm sure you're aware, when the colonial governments left, the sort of psychological and legal tricks that they used to deal with people who were trying to fight for African independence, those same tricks, they simply handed them over to the new set of people who became the independence era leadership in Nigeria and across Africa. And, those tricks are what we are still witnessing to date. So, putting Dele Farotimi in handcuffs, for example, logically speaking, there's no reason for you to do that. It's a defamation case. What is he going to do? Is he going to, drag an officer's gun and make a bolt for it? 50-something-year-old man with a public profile that he has? Of course not. But they know why they're doing that. The entire point of that is make sure you parade him in front of all the TV cameras. Make sure that those images are circulated on every media platform in the country so that his children and his family will see it and they will be traumatized. And that in itself can start to, cause him to break psychologically. It's psychological torture. That's what all of this is about.
It's psychological torture, but also activists have often argued that cases like this are also designed to intimidate and, suppress and silence dissent. Do you believe that Dele Farotimi's case fits this narrative as well?
I don't need to believe it because it's playing out directly in front of our faces. It's very obvious that the establishment has been looking for a scapegoat with a suitably big profile to make an example of, because maybe the feeling is that Nigerians are getting too comfortable speaking out and speaking very plainly. People like me, we have been in trouble forever for doing that. And if they were ever able to get hold of people like me, then what they're doing to Dele Farotimi will be a walk in the park. I know that. So maybe now that they've found something, however tenuous it is to use to get hold of him, the point of this now is to show that nobody's above this kind of treatment. So even if you have Dele Farotimi's kind of profile, Dele Farotimi is not a poor man, right? And he's a very distinguished professional in the legal space, in the civil society space, in every space that he has been involved in. He's a highly distinguished person with an international profile. This is someone who travels around the world. He's known to foreign governments. This is not just some random, Twitter activist kind of person. This is a far more consequential person than most people. And they're able to treat him like a common criminal. This is a statement to the Nigerian civil space, be it the media space, the civil society space, however compromised it already is, the activism space, even the social media space. This is a statement that you might think that on some level you have escaped our control because you can speak on platforms that we don't control. You can sell your book on Amazon. So we can't stop a bookshop from selling it. You can post your thoughts on Twitter, and we can't stop people from reading it. The most we can do is ban it and then use a VPN and still read it anyway. So you might think you have transcended the level of control that we once had, but even at that level, we can still get to you. So which, for example, is why I would imagine that this, however unenforceable it is, they also managed to obtain an injunction telling Amazon to stop selling the book. We all know that's not going to be enforced, but the point of it, the point of putting that out there is to let everyone in the Nigerian space know that as long as whatever you're doing concerns the Nigerian space, you are not beyond the arms of the Nigerian government. So if whatever you are saying is not with the program, if you don't approve of it, we are coming for you. We're going to get you. Like we've got Dele Farotimi now, and he's rotting in a jail in Ekiti State. So don't think you're above this. If it can happen to him, it can happen to you too.
Okay.
This ties into human rights, right? This we're talking about, I think about a few days ago, it's been the celebration of human rights and just really a conversation about, ensuring that governments and whether it's agencies like the police or, the judiciary make sure that that the human rights of the average Nigerian, the common man is met, right? On your take, I'm going to start with you, Adam, and then I'll come to you, David. Have the police and the judiciary met Dele Farotimi's rights as a human being? Have they, in somewhat, done justice by him?
Okay, thank you once again. As far as the state of the law is concerned, there is a Cyber Crimes Act, amended 2024, that prescribe, online statements that tends to bully or intimidate or even threaten to damage the reputation of a person. So that law is a law validly made by the National Assembly. So I think the important thing is for every citizen to be aware of the limits of the rights provided by the Constitution. But the question is, should those laws still be there in the 21st century Nigerian democratic society? And that's the question. And, as far as the civil ones are, civil liability on defamation is concerned, that's fine because it's between two equal parties. But as far as the criminal element of it is concerned, I think at this age, in this country, we should do away with all laws that tend to criminalize freedom of speech.
So like she said, do you think his rights has been infringed?
The law as at today, his right has not been infringed. If there is a reasonable suspicion of commission of a crime, they have set up the mechanism to prosecute that commission of that offense according to the law. But I'm even rising above the law and saying, should we still maintain criminal laws criminalizing defamation in our laws in today's century? And that's what I'm driving at. So those Lagos State has taken it out, 2 other states. Let's have all other states in the country, let them abolish heavy laws so that you can give priority to freedom of speech as an essential element of democracy.
Nice.
Yeah.
Right. Well, nicely said. David, your thoughts on this as well. Infringement of human rights for Dele Farotimi. Do you see the police and the judiciary have done this in any way, shape or form in the entirety of this process?
I think you know what my answer is going to be, and I think it's also very unsurprising that both guests will have two very different answers, because I am me, speaking from this perspective, and he is a senior partner at a law firm whose office is in Banana Island. So, we know who is part of the establishment
David,
and who is not.
You cannot
so from my perspective, from my perspective, I think it's clear what has happened here. I think there was a CCTV video that went around showing the moment when these police officers dressed like G.I. Joe, armed to the teeth, broke into his law offices and basically abducted him, because that was an abduction, not an arrest. Rendered him across state lines, right, all the way to Ekiti State, under a law that potentially doesn't exist in Ekiti, or it may or may not exist, depending on which side of the bed the judge decided to wake up on. So there's no way you see all of that and say, oh, well, he was treated fairly. This is perfectly fine. There was no violation of human rights concerned here, But again, I'm speaking from the point of view of someone who has a certain perspective on things. There are other people who speak from other points of view. So I guess we will never agree on that. That's not surprising.
But I mean, he made a valid point about, decriminalizing libel and defamation, that it shouldn't be criminal in any sense of the word, and that should be decriminalized so that energies and focuses to other matters, and defamation can now be a civil matter as opposed to it being in that sense. Don't you think so?
Again, the correct person to ask this to is the judge, because again, going back to what I've been saying right from the start, going back to the newsletter I even put out, my major problem in all of this is not even whether Dele Farotimi supposedly defamed somebody or not. My major problem is under what framework is he actually even being tried? They're just making it up. as they go along. As I mentioned in the newsletter that I put out, the initial claim that was filed by Afai Babalola SAN got the actual material facts of the so-called claim were wrong. It was obviously put together in such a hurry and such a rush that basic establishing claims were wrong. So, for example, the claim was that Dele Farotimi made a defamatory accusation on a Channels TV broadcast with Sheikh Okinbaloye. Dele Farotimi has not been on Channels TV for the entire second half of 2024. It was actually a Sheikh Okinbaloye private podcast, a mic on podcast. So, for an SAN who is supposedly filing a defamation claim to not be able to verify such an obvious discrepancy shows that there's something else going on here. It wasn't really about whether somebody felt he has been defamed or not, and then put together a professional lawsuit to take this issue to court. Somebody somewhere, a bigger masquerade somewhere, has identified Dele Farotimi as a threat to be neutralized. And Afai Babalola SAN, at his 95 years of age, decided to allow himself to be used as the tool to actualize this agenda for reasons best known to him. So, however this is going to work out for everyone, good luck to all those concerned.
Well, David, I must say thank you so much for taking out the time to join us today for this discussion. Also, many thanks to you, Adam Wahab, as well. It's been kind of very insightful, varying views and insight and perspective, which is what we want to see. The most important thing is we see the A, but only from different angles, and we have to see from all angles.
Judith, just a second. While we still have David here, I wanted to ask him regarding the case of arrested nurse. I'm looking
Nurse
for her name.
Abiodun Thomas.
Abiodun Thomas, yes. Now, you have heard of the story. I'm wondering what you think regarding her situation, because it's rather similar when you look at it in the grander scheme of things regarding dissent and people being perhaps maybe fingered out for their speaking up against a certain system. What do you think on that one, David?
I think from a legal point of view, I'm not a lawyer, but I think from a legal point of view, the use of that thing that they call the Cybercrime Act, I think there needs to be some sort of guardrails that are put in place now, because it seems as if anything at all that you do in Nigeria now can be criminalized under this supposed Cybercrimes Act. Anything at all. If you post a tweet saying that you don't like the color blue, somebody can say that that is defamatory to the color blue, and you have committed internet stalking against the color blue, and therefore you should be shipped to Abuja and put in a gulag in Maitama. It seems as if that act, that bill is so vaguely worded, it's so ambiguously worded that it can be interpreted in any way that the authorities see fit. And the authorities in question here are not the judiciary, it's the police. So effectively, this Cybercrimes Act has given the Nigerian police force the ability to effectively be the judge, jury, and executioner, which I think it's fair to say is completely contradictory to the spirit of most constitutions in the world, definitely the 99 constitution that we supposedly adhere to in Nigeria. So I think this arrest that you're referring to is yet another manifestation of this abuse of the Cybercrimes Act by the police and by the intelligence and security authorities. And I think legally speaking, maybe or legislatively speaking, something needs to be done to ensure that either the powers in this act are very, very clearly defined in a very granular manner, or this act is modified in such a way as to remove most of this enforcement teeth, because clearly it's being misused.
David.
And one day, even those of you in the studio might find yourselves on the wrong side of this act too, because everything is covered by this act.
Well, we expect that as journalists, quite frankly. We won't be surprised. But thank you very much, David. Thank you very much, Adams, for coming in and giving us both your expert opinions on the Farotimi case saga. Let's put it so. Thank you very much. Now, to our viewers, do stay tuned, because coming up will be the news. Judith is getting ready for that one. We still got an hour left inside of Breakfast Extra. So, well, stay tuned for more discussions.
Hello and welcome. You're watching News Central Television. It's time for the breakfast headlines. And we begin in Gombe, where residents of Pawishi village in Kaumai district of Biliri local government area has said no fewer than 5 persons were murdered during the recent invasion by suspected herdsmen. The community members faulted earlier reports which stated that only Malam Yusuf Kwara was killed in the attack. The violence began Wednesday afternoon and culminated in the burning of over 250 houses as of Thursday morning. A statement signed by the State Police Public Relations Officer, ASP Buhari Abdullahi, had said a combined team of police officers and the 301 Artillery Regiment was mobilized to contain the situation. Still on security, the Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Musa, has deployed a Special Operations Brigade to Sokoto and Kebbi states as part of efforts to eradicate the Lukarawa sect from the region. The deployment is part of the ongoing operations aimed at eliminating the self-acclaimed jihadist group operating in the two northwestern states. According to a statement released in Sokoto, the deployment seeks to boost the successes achieved under an operation to chase out the Lukarawa. Addressing the troops on Friday, Brigadier General Ibikunle Achose, the General Officer commanding 8th Division of the Nigerian Army and Commander of Sector 2, Operation Fasad Yama, conveyed the directives of the Theatre Commander Major General Oluyinka Shoyele. He tasked the troops with ensuring the total dismantlement of the Lukarawa sect in affected states. Away from that, the Appeal Court Abuja has set aside all orders restricting the Central Bank of Nigeria and the Accountant General of the Federation from releasing funds to the Rivers State government. The three-member panel, presided by Justice Haman Barker, held that the subject matter was not within the jurisdiction of the court relating to the revenue of the state. While allowing the appeal of the Rivers State government, the appellate court also set aside all the orders made by Justice Joyce Abdul Malik, stating that it was unconstitutional for her to make orders restricting Rivers State government to receive funds due to the state from its Consolidated Revenue Fund. The appellate court held that the lower court overreached itself and did not have the jurisdiction to entertain the matter. The former governor of Kogi State, Yahaya Bello, has been granted bail to the tune of about 500 million naira by the Federal High Court in Abuja. Bello, who is facing a 19-count charge of alleged money laundering, breach of trust and misappropriation of public funds amounting to 80.2 billion naira, appeared in court before Justice Emeka Nwuti for a resumed hearing on his bail application. News Central's Joshua Imarayi was at the court and filed this report. Take a look.
The charge was brought against the former Kogi State Governor Yahaya Bello by the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. At the resumed hearing, the EFCC counsel Kemi Pinheiro informed the court of the prosecution's intention to withdraw a previous application for an abridgment of the arraignment date because the application had been overtaken by events. The counsel to the defendant did not object the request by the EFCC, which was duly granted by the trial judge, Justice Emeka Nwite, striking out the application. Upon reading the 19-count charge, the former governor, Bello pleaded not guilty. After hearing the bail applications from both counsels, the judge granted bail to the former governor to the tune of 500 million naira with two sureties and like sum. Bello is also required to deposit his international passport with the court. The case was then subsequently adjourned to February 24th, 28th, March the 6th and 7th, 2025 for trial. In Abuja for News Central, I am Joshua Imarayi.
Nigeria's Minister of Foreign Affairs has tasked ECOWAS member states to work towards creating trade and investment opportunities for citizens of the sub-region. The minister, while speaking at the 93rd ordinary session of the ECOWAS Council of Ministers in Abuja, expressed confidence that the meeting will help the ministers make far-reaching recommendations for the ECOWAS authority heads of states and government to create radical changes that will improve the lives of citizens. Also, the president of the ECOWAS Commission pledged the commitment of the Commission to work towards effecting positive changes in the lives of citizens of the sub-region. What you're seeing there is ongoing impeachment protests by South Koreans, as they rally ahead of the second vote to oust President Yoon. Now, we know that President Yoon called for martial law, which he has so far apologized for, but has now, the rally that you've seen from there of South Koreans. Now, South Koreans MPs have voted to impeach President Yoon Suk Yeol as thousands of protesters on the streets of Seoul cheer the result. Now, Yoon will be suspended while the Prime Minister will serve as acting president. The Constitutional Court now has 6 months to rule on the impeachment. A total of 204 MPs approved the motion to impeach Yoon, who plunged the country into political turmoil with a short-lived martial law declaration last week. Yoon survived an impeachment vote last weekend and has clung to power despite mounting calls for him to step down. Yoon and his allies are currently under investigation for insurrection charges, and a travel ban has been slapped on several of them. Just again, South Korean MPs have voted to impeach President Yoon as thousands of protesters have rallied in front of the House, as you can see from the screens there. And that's all we can take for Breakfast Headlines. We switch gears back to Breakfast Extra. I'm Judith at TV. Thanks for watching. And let's get into our extra special for today. And we're going to be focusing on the significance of World Human Rights Day. It's themed Our Rights, Our Future, Right Now. So through the lenses of Nigeria's human rights landscape, while this day serves as a global reminder of our fundamental freedoms, Nigeria's record on human rights remains a subject of national and international concern. Allegations of suppression of protesters, targeted arrest of journalists under contentious cybercrime laws, and instances of police brutalities continue to paint a troubling picture. For example, Amnesty International has highlighted cases of unlawful detentions and live ammunition used on protesters, with numerous deaths and injuries reported. Similarly, journalists have also faced increasing crackdowns, with arrests justified under laws that seem to stifle freedom of expression rather than protect national security. So the impact of these violations goes beyond the individuals directly affected, challenging the collective conscience of Nigerians and questioning the state's commitment to upholding constitutional rights. As many citizens remain unaware of their rights enshrined in the Constitution, today's discussion seeks to educate, empower, exploring how we can move towards a more inclusive and just society.
So to dissect the issues, we are honored to have two esteemed guests here with us. One, Comrade Prince Marvis Eva-Emagbe, former Secretary of the Committee for the Defense of Human Rights, Edo State Chapter, and Issa Sanusi, who is joining us via the chat, Country Director of Amnesty International Nigeria. Gentlemen, you're welcome here for this very critical discussion. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me this morning.
Very good. So, Mr. Issa, let's first start with you. From an Amnesty International point of view, how would you assess the current administration's commitment to protecting human rights? And I'm talking about the Nigerian instance now.
Well, let me just start by saying that nothing has changed about human rights in Nigeria. We are continuing on the same trajectory of violations and abuses, lack of accountability, and the failure of the Nigerian authorities to consider human rights as fundamental, not only to the development of the country, but also to the prosperity of the country and prosperity of the people. We have a situation whereby accountability is still zero when it comes to human rights in Nigeria. It has been like this for many years. It still remains that way. We are rather also having new dimensions whereby journalists are arrested on flimsy excuses, using or manipulating the Cyber Crimes Act, which in many ways contradicted many parts of the Nigerian Constitution, and arrested, harassed, many other things. Within this year alone, journalists and bloggers, at least 11 of them have been arrested. And this thing is not stopping. When it comes to protection of lives, which is the fundamental responsibility of the government, it is still the same story, whereby gunmen are still on rampage in many parts of northern Nigeria. They go in, kill people, and then get away with it without accountability, and then the people become displaced, and they continue to live in displacement forever. So when it comes to police brutality, every day we receive reports of police brutality, even though after the NSAS protest of 2020, we had a lot of promises, a lot of pledges by the government to end police atrocities. Unfortunately, the story has not much changed, because every day we are receiving news, we are receiving reports, concrete reports of people brutalized or extorted, police stealing from people. So the story, the picture is still grim and unfortunate. Is not something that should happen. Is something also that we should all be worried about.
While I'm still on this topic here, is there a global ranking for human rights? And where does Nigeria fall on it? Basically, I'm asking what Nigeria's perception is to the international community.
Well, Amnesty International does not do something that can be considered to be a ranking, because what we do at the end of every year is to report the human rights situation in every country. And there is no country where you would not find these things. It's just that the magnanimity, the size of the problems is bigger in some countries. But as you know, Nigeria has been ranked very low globally in terms of human rights for so long. Since the military days, and when we come into the civilian days, we have new pattern of human rights violation and abuses. So Nigeria's ranking or Nigeria's image in the human rights community is still very bad, and it continues to get bad with every news showing atrocities. Like the August End Bad Governance protest, at least 24 people were killed, and including minors. So, and we are expecting that this kind of, killing of protesters will come to an end. Unfortunately, it hasn't. 24 people were killed, and they didn't carry any arms, and some of them are even minors. And many of those killed were not even at the protest scene. They were at home or moving around, but the bullet reached them wherever they are. So if you want me to give you a picture based on what I know about the status of Nigeria in terms of human rights, the country's ranking is still very low, very, very low, and shameful for a country that is practicing democracy and operating a system of governance that recognizes freedom and justice.
Now, I mean, let me also talk about, now we're talking about freedom and justice, let's talk about the judicial system, right? And I'm going to come to you, Marvis Eva Imagbe, and just really talk about this, extensively. You represent the CDHR, you're the former secretary, and we know that the judicial system is somewhat snail-paced, there we go. It's very slow when it comes to, due to the delays in the process and everyone waiting to get their own day in court. How does this contribute in any form, shape to, the infringement of fundamental human rights for Nigerians?
Okay, thanks again for having me here today. When we talk about the judicial system in our country, I don't always want to say this, but I will say it, because human rights talks about the freedom of expression. Now, the problem with the judicial system is the fact that some persons, like the saying goes, cash and carry. I am not saying that the judiciary is a cash and carry institution, but we live in a country whereby human rights violation is very high. And when some persons are oppressed, first of all, they don't even know how to go about it. They don't even know who to meet. They don't even those that know who to meet and how to go about it, but they don't have the resources. And even if they do, who they are fighting with or who is oppressing them may at the end of the day, because of influence, money in the pocket, delay the whole process. And for what I know, the judiciary is and supposed to be the last hope of the common man. But do we have that today in our country? That is the question we should ask ourselves. So the lawyers or the legal practitioners, as far as I'm concerned, part of their duty is to protect and defend the rights of humans. So I would say that the judiciary, though they are trying their best, but I want to plead that they should put in more effort to make sure that human rights violations are not condoned at all in any court.
And very interesting when you think about it. And then one will now have to start talking about reforms and what better way for our judiciary to be better, reformed to help better uphold the human rights of its citizens. What would those reforms look like?
Like I said earlier on, the problem is that most of our laws and policies are not people-centric. To have a better society that is just and equitable for all, every policy must carry the people's mind. And if we must do that, the judiciary must be truly independent without any form of interference. So to have reforms of the judiciary, or in whatever way you want to put it, we must, as a people, try as much as we can to make sure that every policies and every reforms that we are going to bring about to help the judiciary carry out their functions, and also for human rights to be a sustainable thing, we must make it a people-centric policy.
Okay. Mr. Issa, I'm going to come back to you now, and I'm going to ask this question regarding rights and individuals, and whether individuals are truly aware of their rights, especially in most African countries. I'm sure that you have researched into other countries and how this plays out. But in a country where the populace are not aware of what their rights are, whose responsibility is it that they do? Is it that of the people themselves, or does the judiciary have any responsibility here, or the government itself? How can we bridge this gap, this knowledge gap, deficits that we have when it comes to our rights as human beings, as Nigerians?
Well, let me look at it from the angle of responsibility. I believe that the first responsibility is on the government. The implementation of laws and making sure that people respect the law and did not violate it lay squarely on the shoulders of the government. Therefore, the government has a responsibility to inform the people, okay, when there is a breakdown of electricity in your area, this is the right you have. When you don't have sanitation, this is your right. And this is where your right stops. This is where it begins. So it is the duty of the government, because they are the custodians and of the law and the rules, to tell the people these are your rights. For example, when you go to a hospital, you are supposed to know what your rights are. The hospital should tell you what you are entitled to, how long you will wait to see a doctor, what kind of medicine that you can be given for free, and what you have to pay, and what are the rules. And so everything has to be spelled out clearly to the people, and the government will benefit much more if it has invested in human rights education. Because when people know their rights, that is when they will be able to function and to protect those rights. On the part of the people also, there is a responsibility, if the government is not doing the right thing to adequately give people a human rights education, it is their own duty as well to inform themselves, to try to seek the knowledge about what is my right. For example, when it comes to paying tax, the government is asking us to pay more and more tax. So does that tax means that we are just like slaves? We just toil for the whole month, and then somebody to take a chunk of our salary as tax, and then we see that person flying around the roads with huge convoy of wasteful cars, expensive cars. What is our right regarding our tax that we pay? And how is our tax being used? They have the responsibility to tell us. And when we have breakdown of water supply, people don't need to dig boreholes to drain the whole ecosystem of the water supply on the ground and cause chaos in the future. So all these things means that the government has to adequately inform people, but the government is benefiting from people's ignorance. Therefore, that is why they are not interested in investing in human rights education. They don't even like the mention of human rights because they want a situation whereby the society will continue in the form and format of the societies of the medieval time, where you have lords, where you have monarchs, people with overwhelming power, where might is right, and this is the situation we are. When governors pay salary, they want to be patted on the back. When governors pay salaries, they pay pensions. They want it to be a breaking news in the media. And so these are some of the things that we have to consider and make sure that we are doing. But in the part of the people and lawyers and human rights organizations like ours, we also have a responsibility. And that's why Amnesty International has a human rights education plan, which we are implementing across Nigeria. But we target young people because we believe that instilling the ideals of human rights has to start from the younger generation, so that we will have a future generation that is completely different from the present generation. And that is why, when you hear stories of bullying in secondary schools, it's shocking. And we want to stop that by making sure that we extensively and aggressively carry out human rights education across secondary schools and universities, so that the new generation will come without that baggage of human rights ignorance and human rights violation. But I believe that the government has to do more and has to invest, particularly empower the National Human Rights Commission to carry out massive human rights enlightenment, so that people will know their rights. And it's only when people know their rights that they can be able to protect them. And lawyers to have a moral responsibility, because their knowledge of the law comes with responsibility. It's not just about making money out of it. It's also giving back to the society by enlightening people, helping them to protect their rights, and making those rights very clear, so that people will understand where their right begin and where it ends, and they can be able to protect them from violators. And we have violators all over the place. And these violators sometimes are security personnel, sometimes are top politicians, and sometimes are prominent persons in business. And we have to tame them. We have to make sure that they could not just use their power to trample upon our rights, to destroy lives.
Mr. Issa, I have to ask, right, you are a representative of Amnesty International. I'm throwing this question to both of you, but let me start with you. This year, we saw the fallout of the hashtag #BadGovernance protests, which lasted about 8 days, 10 days from the 1st of August, and the aftermath of that protest, which was the arraignment of minors at a federal high court in Abuja. So I have to ask you, what are some human rights violations that happened during the protests that we saw this year? Let me start with you, Mr. Issa.
An extensive research about what happened between the 1st of August and to the 10th of August during the End Bad Governance protest. First of all, I have to say that that protest was very successful in the sense that it sent the message directly to the leaders of Nigeria that they are trying to use very bad economic policies to make poverty abundant instead of making prosperity abundant. What happened was that before, I have never seen a protest, even NSAS, I have never seen a protest where government use all means to stop, like end bad governance, because many things were used, many tricks were applied before the protest to make sure that it does not take place, like intimidating people, harassing people who support it, even sponsoring some imposters from Sudan to come and tell us that if we do protest, Nigeria will become like Sudan. People dress up like Sudanese, but they are not Sudanese. They were paraded in mosques, they are paraded, derailed the protest. But at the place, one area in Kano called Lemo, where majority of the people, of those 12 people were killed, there was not even looting, there is nothing. It's just a case of police confronting people, chanting songs, seeking change, asking for good governance, confronting them with live ammunition. And at the end of the day, while the people were retreating, the police kept on chasing them and gunning them down. And at the end of the day, 12 people were killed in Kano.
All right.
In other places as well, similar thing happened. But it was all a clear indication of the fact that the police has not changed. They still use excessive force. And it was really against the law for them to confront peaceful protesters with live ammunition.
Mr. Issa Sanusi, thank you very much for giving us details of exactly what happened the past elections, or rather protests, from your perspective on your research and all. I'm going to come to the studio here and ask Mr. Eva Magbi, how many Nigerians know their rights? Don't answer yet. Now, because we had to actually go to the streets and we had to take a sample ourselves before we actually put this out today as a discussion. So let's find out exactly what we found out when we hit the streets to find out if Nigerians truly know their rights.
Human rights happens to be every good thing that a citizen of Nigeria must benefit. And I don't even want to exclude anything from any other stuff. Everything in Nigeria is meant for every citizen in Nigeria to benefit. But because of what has been happening, because of the Olabalu, chaos, every other thing has been depriving, this has really made the government to be depriving us of our rights. So as a good citizen of Nigeria, the only thing I know I benefited from government happens to be the movement and the freedom of religions, because I go to any church I wish to go, and I have the right to move from one place to another without anybody restricting my movement. So, but any other thing, I don't see any other advantage there.
As a citizen of Nigeria, I have right to life, right to freedom of speech, right to vote and be voted for, right to be free. They don't really follow the constitution anyway, but as an individual, I know my rights and I'm glad I do.
Nigeria, how you do like this now? That right, many people know what they do am again. Even to free to talk on self, even police, everybody on self, you go to fear because something where you not do on self. They go talk say you do am.
I know I have freedom of movement. I have some legal right, like, having access to some things and know things I'm supposed to do as a Nigerian, like what I have to say. I have the right to, like, my voice has to count for me, even if I don't know anything. But as it stands in Nigeria now, I'm deprived of everything. Even to walk on the street, I'm deprived because you get police harassing people, and you know that because of the fact that they are actually on uniform and all that. And from the governmental side, you don't get the benefits. When it comes to like taxation, if I don't pay direct tax, I pay indirect tax, and these people you talk about indirectly collect tax from me, and I don't benefit any of those things. So you see, if you come about talking about my rights, I don't think I have a right in this country because I'm denied of all those rights.
We don't really have the right, because everyone in power has the right over everyone's down below. So everyone down below doesn't have any rights over. So it gives someone not to be able to speak his mind, to talk to your boss, like all the rights, human rights, everything was seized by anyone you see that is ahead of you. We don't have rights at all. We don't have rights. If I say we have rights, we are lying. We just have rights maybe to be alive, not to be sick, if we have the means. But the ones that are poor, they only have rights to die. But as we are, we don't have rights. As a citizen of Nigeria, we don't have rights. Is the truth. We don't have rights. Because you know how the economy is now, so I don't want to start. We don't have rights. We don't have rights because if anything is going, we are just suffering and smiling and trying to ease the pain. That's all. We don't have rights.
Welcome back inside the studio. And before we left, I was asking Mr. Yahaya a very pertinent question regarding rights and individuals. So I come back to you. Now, from what you have seen, it's very ambiguous exactly whether people know their rights or what rights they even have. I'm even confused at this point.
It was so interesting when one of the respondents there was linking human rights to the economy. He said, we don't have rights. You know how the economy is now. If I start, I don't finish it today.
Another one did a very interesting comparison here, and I hope Mr. Issa is listening as well, where he compared it to Animal Farm, although he didn't put it exactly like that. But anybody ahead of you has more rights than you do. So what can we do to bring people, and now this is for you, Mr. Imagwe, what can we do so people are aware of the wide spectrum of rights, not just the right for movement or the right for this, but all of it?
Okay. I think the last speaker talked about, you know how the economy is now. I think that caught my attention.
The economy.
If we truly have these inalienable rights that is inherent in us, I don't think we'll be going through what we are going through right now. So, on one hand, I will support him when he says we don't have rights. And many Nigerians believe that rights or human rights don't work in Nigeria. I've engaged some persons who will tell me, oh God, I beg you, all this you want just do for formality. Rights no they happen here. Now for Igbo land, all these rights dey. And he will not blame them because when we talk about how many Nigerians know they are right, one thing is to know. Another is to know what to do with what you know. Then why majority don't even know? They believe that the government decides everything. Whatever the government dish out to us is what we follow. Why those that know they are right or like know it, like reading it, this is my right, they don't know how to go about it? Some that knows how to go about it, the fear of what if I start doing this thing now? You sure say they're not going to arrest me so. You sure say they're not going to kill me so. You sure say my life not going to be danger. That fear also play a role why Nigerians believe we don't have rights. Now, there is this saying that it is better to live for something and to die than to die for nothing. The greatest fear of a man or the greatest enemy of a man is fear. When you are scared to fight for your right, automatically you don't even deserve to live.
But that has been taken away from us. The fear is what we live under.
Exactly.
So how can we now come up and say, yeah, I want to fight for something I'm scared of anyway?
Okay, I want to ask a question.
Go ahead.
For you to be sitting there today, some persons fought for the freedom of this country so that one Oga or slave master will not just come to say, Mazino, get off from that place. And these persons, they know that whatever they are going to start now or do will attract some implications. But they were ready to die. Some of them never even believed that they will even witness Nigerian independence. But they went ahead to fight for what they believe is their right. So if you are living with that fear, I know that the system has been designed to put fear in us in order for us not to fight for what rightfully belongs to us. But if you are living with that fear, you never get somewhere. Now, as individuals, read, ask questions, join human rights movement. There are courses online that you can take as regards human rights so that you can equip yourself. By the time you equip yourself with this knowledge, some of these fears will begin to leave you. By the time you are now mingling with some persons who are in the race already, some of this fear will begin to leave you, and you'll not be better equipped to confront any fear or obstacles that may come your way. But the human rights movement, are we really doing enough to even educate the public? Because if you want to wait for the government, at the end of the day, I will say nothing will happen. Automatically, the human rights movement, we are not doing enough, and I will not blame some of us, because to really do anything, money must be involved. Let's say, for example, you want to go on doing campaign at the grassroots level to educate the people what their rights are. First of all, you need to eat that very day.
They need to eat as well.
To have the energy. They too need to eat to have the strength and energy to even listen to you. Mm-hmm. Because they may even say, I beg, I don't want yes, it's money, I never eat, and I don't fight for my right to eat.
No wonder that man linked human rights to economy.
Roundabout. There we go.
So now, you that is going to preach this human rights gospel to them, you also need transportation. Some of us, a lot of persons see us as jobless people. Like, Nigeria, they do all this one, or not get work. And at the end of the day, they will still run to us when their rights are violated. Person will not get work. So we need to do more, just like you are doing now, because it's a collective effort.
Okay.
You are just creating awareness now.
Okay.
The Human Rights Day is already over, although we are still in the month. But today you have created a platform to educate the people, the media houses, the government, institutions, in any form. They all need to collaborate, to work together so that we can have the human right that we truly deserve, not the one on paper or the one we just talk about without enforcement.
All right. Let me come to you, Mr. Issa, and just wrap up this discussion for this morning and ask you, I mean, we have called the media, all thanks to Mr. Imagbe here, is called out the media, civil societies, and even the government when it comes to just human rights education for the masses. But I have to ask you, what critical partner is left out of this discussion?
I believe that, let me first of all start by saying that the media is the most important, most fundamental contributing sector of the society in terms of enlightening people on freedom and justice. I believe that no any segment of people will parallel or even compare with the media in terms of promoting and protecting human rights. The only person who is not in this discussion or missing in this room is the judiciary. Judiciary is now facing a lot of challenge, a lot of accusations, a lot of allegations. I believe that the judiciary has a role to play. Even recently, the Inspector General of Police was quoted by the media saying that the criminal justice system is a mess and police should not be blamed. Everyone is pointing fingers at the judiciary. I think if this is a room where we are having the discussion, the judiciary is the only institution that now faces a lot of challenges. So many allegations of manipulation, so many allegations of favoritism, so many allegations. So the judiciary has to clean itself up, because without the judiciary, no country will survive. When you have issues of human rights violation, you have the confidence that when you go to court, whether you are against a minister or a billionaire, you have the confidence that the judge is above being bribed, is above being influenced, and you will get justice. But when you have this kind of case, you cannot even contemplate going to court, because you know that you will not get justice. People don't even like going to court, and that's why we are having so much violence in the country. When someone took away something that belonged to you, instead of going to the court to seek for your right through a judicial process sanctioned by the Constitution, people just take the law into their own hands. That's why we have a very, very, very violent society in Nigeria. You will see a lot of violence, people killing each other, people carrying out murder and everything. So the judiciary is missing. It has to really raise up. Let us have a judiciary that people respect. Let us have a judiciary that is clean. No one is perfect, but I believe that the level of accusations and fingers pointed at the Nigerian judiciary are too many and so many for it to remain silent, for it to refuse to reform itself, to make the justice system work for the people. Because if the judiciary is not up to the task, if the judiciary is not doing its work, if the judiciary is manipulated by rich politicians, we even now have a popular saying that you can go to the court, which is just like a sarcastic way of portraying how the justice system is now, where a powerful person will tell you, just go to the court. I believe that the judiciary is missing, and it has to raise the stake. They have to redeem themselves. They have to rescue this country from rapacious people, from politicians who are greedy for power, and from any individual who is not interested in well-being of the people, people who want to take what does not belong to them. The only last hope of the people, last hope of the common man, last hope of the Nigerian is the judiciary. And I believe that unless the judiciary get it right, this country will go into a chaos.
Unless the judiciary gets it right, the country will go into chaos. Mr. Issa Sanusi, let's bring it home for us journalists. The Cyber Crimes Act is something that concerns us very much as people who have to actually put out word there for, well, the populace. So what do we need to know, especially as journalists, so that this act is not weaponized against us during our line of duty?
As I said at the beginning of this discussion, this year alone, or just after this government came to power from May 29, at least 11 bloggers and journalists have been arrested using the Cyber Crimes Act. The Cyber Crimes Act, I will encourage people to read it. It's a very manipulative, very dangerous piece of legislation that should not exist in a free society. And when we did an analysis of it like 2, 3, 4 years ago, we realized that many facts of it are contradictory to the provisions of the Nigerian Constitution that guarantees the right to freedom of expression, the right to freedom, the right to freedom of movement, the right to freedom of assembly. So the law is concocted in a way that is meant to give powerful people the ability to gag people, to stop people from criticizing them. Like, there are many parts of that bill that are against fundamental human rights. And fundamental human rights is guaranteed by the Nigerian Constitution and is guaranteed by the international law. So if you look at the whole of the Cyber Crimes Act, it is not meant to bring sanity or protect people. It is meant to protect big people, to protect important individuals from criticism. And it is also meant to whittle down the freedom of the media, to whittle down the freedom of the press, to silence journalists and to scare them and harass them and intimidate them and prevent them from subjecting those in power to thorough scrutiny and protecting public interest. Because the media is established or was established everywhere to protect the interests of the public. That is it. And the interest of the public supersedes every other thing anybody will talk about. Therefore, we have to push the government, we have as Nigerians and the media as well, we have to push for the total abrogation, total complete removal of that piece of suppression and repression from our rule, from our law books, because the Cyber Crimes Act has now become a tool of manipulation, a tool of intimidation and harassment. It has now been used to jail many journalists, many bloggers, and even people who have money are now using it to arrest and detain people who criticize them. So we have to work hard to make sure that that law is removed completely from Nigerian laws, because it is very dangerous for freedom. It is very dangerous for the media. It constantly puts journalists in a situation whereby they will be looking over their shoulder because they don't know what will come next after they have done their job. And their job is guaranteed by the Constitution and international law. Therefore, cyber crimes, it must be actually completely removed, in my opinion.
Okay. I mean, when we look at all of the arrests that have happened and detention of journalists in this year alone, it really brings to fore the discussion about just being able to free press and being able to do our jobs with no form of intimidation or unlawful arrest. But gentlemen, this has been sublime. This discussion has been very insightful, and it has hopefully set the tone for a national discourse when it comes to human rights education for the masses. I want to say many big thank you to Mr. Issa Sanusi, as well as Mavis Eva Imagbe. Many thanks, gentlemen, for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you very much.
Well, that means it's time for us to say our goodbyes because it's the end of the show now. And I want to say thank you to everybody who joined us from 8 o'clock. We'll be here again for a Sunday installment of Breakfast Extra. Myself, Mazino Appeal, and of course, Judith the TV. So join us then. Goodbye, everybody.